In this series, we're going to start by looking at a variety of different problems and solutions over at Code Wars. This allows us to play with a variety of sample problems and algorithms, and the first thing that we'll be looking at is recursion. The problem context at the moment is to create a factorial function. As we can see in mathematics, the factorial of a non-negative integer n, so if we had the integer 5, it can be denoted by n bang. And it's the product of all the positive integers less than or equal to n. So if we had 5 bang, that would be the product of 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1, giving us 120 total. And the factorial of 0 is 1. So this means we need to create a function that checks to see whether first off we have a positive number, whether that number is 0, and otherwise we want to recursively call this function, subtracting 1 from our integer. So inside of our editor I'm going to make a new constant, and that's going to be called factorial, and it's going to be equal to n of type number, and it's going to return a number, and the function body looks like this. Initially we'll return 0. And we'll double check this works by capturing the output. And we'll just say the factorial of 100 at this point. And by simply saying fact here, because I'm using Quokka, we can see that we get 0 as expected. So let's first off say, well, we want to return if n is less than 0. So ensure that we have a positive number. We want to return -1. But instead, if n is equal to 0, then we want to return 1, because that's the factorial of 0, because that's necessary for our function. And finally we want to say, well, if it's not 0, instead we want to call n times the factorial function that we created, which is n minus 1. So if we change this to instead be the factorial of 5, we get 120. So let's look at in a bit more detail of what exactly it is that we've done here. We first off ensured that our function is taking in a number that's greater than 0. If our number happens to be 0, we return 1. Else, if it's greater than 0, because we've already checked to see whether it's less than 0, we want to call that number times the factorial function, which is this section of the function, and that factorial is simply the number minus 1. So this then calls itself up until the number hits 0, and when the number hits 0, this function is no longer called. So that's how the function is called this many times. As you can see, if we type n using Quokka, we can see it was initially called with 5, then 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. Let's take our work and copy that, and we'll paste it inside of Code Wars, remove the n because we're no longer inside of our development environment, and hit Run Sample Tests. Hopefully all of our tests will pass, and as you can see, all of our tests passed based on the appropriate factorials. So we'll hit Attempt, which should submit our test, and we'll be able to see other people's solutions. Here are some other solutions. So we have a factorial constant, which takes in a number and returns a number, and this simply checks to see whether the number is greater than 1. If it is, then of course we will use the factorial function in the same way that we did. We'll recursively call it and -1, and then we'll return 1 if it is not greater than 1. So we seem to have a lot of similar solutions. Here is another one that looks at using the if blocks instead of ternary statements like we did. But I think overall, there's only so many ways you can do this, and that's how we use recursion inside of JavaScript.
Oh, this you crazy mother...